We spent more than 10 minutes there. Developing assessment tasks or questions. Some people just ask questions, but I prefer if you conceptualize tasks. What are the things that you are going to ask your students to do? All right? And if you say project, I want you to tell me what exactly do you mean by this project, because I want to see how that relates to the learning outcomes you have identified. So if your learning outcome does not indicate a basis for a project, then you can't write project, right? Because we're working with so few learning outcomes, you may simply ask a question. So let me see what question you're going to ask of your students. And most importantly, you have to have what the response framework is going to be like. The point being that before you can work out the assessment or your test or whatever for your course, you have to also deconstruct it in terms of your learning outcomes, your teaching methods, and the kinds of tasks or questions that will allow the student to demonstrate achievement of the learning outcomes. Right? So you see, it's all intertwined. Right? They are not, the assessment in your course is not something you add on. You don't just add it on at the end of some time. Or you don't just come up with a final exam question when admin asks you to submit your questions. All right, that's the perfunctory part. And you know that's coming. So you don't wait until the admin asks for your question. Your questions are supposed to be done even before you start teaching your course. Right? Yes, everybody before. They'll find out. Who will find out? What are they going to find out? All right, so let's see what we have here. So let's say we have a course like this, because we say that part of what you'll be required to do is to explain the role of the table of specifications in test construction. You can't see. Well, it is always possible. I don't know if yes, I know where, but I'm wondering if it will impact on Mrs. Spencer's. Richard, is that good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, it's not that great for me.
Oh, well, you could focus on the board, you know, because the screen, because that is what is important. All right, and we'll put it back on thing, because I'm trying to get this whole template on one slide. All right, so the learning outcomes, so I have started to fill in my template. All right, as I'm saying, I'm doing this, my template for this course. You explain the role of the table of specs in test construction. All right, so my topic, let's say for the 2 weeks I imagined, of course, is the table of specifications. I will also want you to do, to critically assess a test in relation to the stated learning outcomes, and then decide on the content validity of an assessment method. What is that telling you about these, the requirements of this course? When I say you have to explain the role of the table of specs, right, how is that different from critically assess a test in relation to the stated learning outcomes? And how is that different from decide on the content validity of an assessment method? Are you seeing the distinction? No? The levels. Yeah, the first one, I'm asking you to explain that as basic knowledge. All right? The second one, I'm asking for you to critically assess a test in relation to stated learning. What do you have to do there? You have to analyze, right? And not only you have to analyze from something that you give me, so you don't know what test I'm going to give you, right? So you have to have some kind of competence in assessing, you know, a test, being able to look at a test and determine whether it is addressing a particular topic, a particular range of topics, the levels at which it's being assessed, and all of that, right? So I could give you in an exam, I could give you in course or whatever, a test and have you do that, okay? And then I ask to decide on the content validity of an assessment method. What am I asking you to do that, to do there? And what do you call judgment? Evaluate. That's what you're doing. You're evaluating. Decide on the content. So you have to make a judgment. So you have to determine whether it's good or bad or indifferent, and what is the evidence that supports what you see. Right? It is good because it is thing. It is appropriate, not appropriate, as the case may be, based on some very specifics of all right. So how are you going to teach for these? I hear direct instruction, experiential learning, so an interactive lecture and PowerPoint illustration. So this is what I'm going to be doing. So you're going to probably get a few examples of a table of specs after we go through the characteristics and so on, so you can see what the characteristics are and see how they apply to some specifics. So you can see we can do that. Here, however, look at what I'm saying. We'll have discussion, yes, but it will be more experiential in group activity, work, pair, share. So the onus will be on you to actually do some work and share with your peers so that we can determine whether you understand the process. All right? So you can choose whatever you wish, whatever you feel will allow you to demonstrate the particular outcomes. All right? And any questions there? I'll put back on the light for the time being. Helena, what question you have? Oh, yes, you're still thinking. I knew there was a question. Yes.
For instance, looking at my learning of application of theories process. The topic being understanding of the stages of growth development.
Well, you don't put understanding of it, just stages of growth development. Do it like what a topic is. Right. You know, a title of a chapter or whatever.
The approach would be assigned reading and discussion. And then the teaching methods is a group assignment, really observing a group in process.
Okay. And that will fall under what strategies? So after you've worked out what your method is, you can put it under one of those strategies. Right. That is for completeness.
That I am going, the stages are going the way they are supposed to.
Okay.
And the assessment.
Well, we come into the assessment. We come into
if it is going the way it's supposed to at this time, am I going the way it's supposed to at this time?
Yeah, more or less. Okay. So first you have to know what your learning outcomes are demanding of your student, and what kind of teaching will allow you, I should say teaching, what kind of learning will allow you to allow your students to grasp the information.
It would be assigned reading and then discussion.
Yeah, but will they read? Well, how you do that? Because part of your teaching is how you assign your readings. If you tell your students to read, right, they generally ignore you, or they come expecting that somebody, I'm sure I turned this off anyway, I'm sure that they're going to expect somebody would have read so that, you know, it takes off the burden on them. I always say that if you want to if you want to give your students assignments and reading, you have to give them, if you want to give them reading assignments, you have to give them tasks to do with it. They have to have, they would have had to have done something, right? Summarize in a concept map the main principles or the main ideas, something, identify the three most, that. Give them something to do. Because reading in vacuum, because that's what it is for the student, in vacuum for the student, is difficult. And you all tell me they don't like to read. I don't believe you. You don't give them good readings, right? You tell them to read. It's not a novel. It's hard work. So give them a task to help them through the reading. Right? Yes, Wilhelmina? You have a problem with what?
No, with that same issue. That's how I usually do my things at class, assigned to reading. Assignments. But lately, I've noticed a trend where the students still don't read, so they can't do the task, and they don't care about the fact that they can't do the task, especially if the task is in groups. And I was told by my senior people, unless the task is for a mark, the students are not going to get it.
Yeah.
Because
that is who they are. You see, sometimes we have to say, all right, who are these people you're dealing with? These people, because they come in here and people don't talk to them, right? So they chart their own course. And as far as they are concerned, they come in here to get that piece of paper. Everything that they are investing time and effort and energy in, they expect that they will have a mark as a reward. That's who they are. Now, you could spend time disabusing them or trying to disabuse them of that and the importance of learning so that you can build on the thing. But that's you. That's you. That was an era past. These people are not particularly interested in they don't know what that is. Right? They cram. So you are asking them now to change their whole philosophy, which is about me and getting this degree, right? So yes, you would like them to learn and you would like to encourage them to learn, and you have to do a lot of talking and engagement otherwise for you to get them to do that. So I wouldn't really give up, but what some of the things you can do is tell them that yes, everything is important and everything will be for marks. Right, and then you select out which you want to use at the end of the day. But you have to tell them anything that you're doing to them, you have to tell them. Right, so that's part of the engagement process.
One of the things that I noticed was common when I was in my degree is that they had lots of participation marks, like marks for participation. So the student does not know where this participation mark is going. So he or she would actually try, as you were saying, we come in with this, notion that everything is, we need to get rewarded for what we do. So the participation, you don't tell them what it's for, so they will work. Well, I mean, they want to.
But technically, you're supposed to tell them what you do, and you're supposed to have a proper rubric for the participation. Yes, right. So, there are conventions that you need to observe. You're not supposed to fool students, because that's one of the things that we struggle against. Assessments are not like pop quiz and so on. Those are not proper assessment practices. You're not fooling. You're supposed to fool anybody. Yes?
It may seem to them as though they're not getting marks for it, but they do get marks for it.
Ultimately?
How they pass.
Yeah, how you convince them of that?
Well, they'll be doing the course a second time, because if they don't get that concept that we're trying to help them.
Yes. Yeah. But they don't know that, and that's why I say you have to talk to your students. You have to, and you don't just talk to them on the first day. You have to talk to them continuously.
These tasks will ultimately reappear.
Yeah, but they don't know what you mean by ultimately. You see, it's not in their consciousness, right? So how we engage them is critical. But I wouldn't give up. But how you approach them and how you discuss with them and explain to them, right? We have just put out a freshers guide, which I think is important for you to use with your students, so you can help them to see the cumulative response to the things, all the little things that they do. But because if you put yourself in the student's place, they come in and they have no clue about your subject matter. Now we all feel that they know things. No, they do not know what it is you're talking about. Even if they're going into professions, they haven't done any research to see what the profession really entails. So yeah, they come in year one, and all they're doing 5 courses. Everything new. Even if they're doing a foundation course, it's new. So they don't know that what is important or what is not important. Neither do they care. They don't have time for that. And that's one of the challenges we have. You have to admit that our curricula are laden, they're overladen. The students don't have time to think. Far less to think about how this thing is going to impact me in the future. No, they just want the mark. Just give me what is essential. That's what they're looking for. What is essential for me to get the marks? Now, I'm not saying it's right or appropriate, but we have to take some of the blame too, because when they come in, right, how they are integrated or not integrated into life at UE, a life at university, is part of the challenge. Because they don't know. They might look bright and intelligent and they're confident, but really and truly, they're neophytes. They are not you. Right? And I always maintain that, remember, as we grow older, we teach our course. Every year we teach our courses and so on. We get better. We get more competent. You get less tolerant of the incompetence of the neophyte. So even if they're coming in at the same place at 19 every year, they look further back to you. Every year people tell me how the students this year worse than the students last year. I don't believe that. You are getting better, so the gap looks wider. So how you close the gap is what is important. All right. Now remember, we tape in, so I don't want to extrapolate and so on. So all right, let us see how we take this now on to the next session. Yes, so your test. I see people when they have to give a test, they start thinking. You all think hard and work hard at your test, you know. You sit down and you think, and you write down what you think you should ask them. Right? Sometimes you want to catch them. Sometimes you have all kinds of objectives, none of which are written in your learning outcomes. Right? So what we want to say, or what we are saying, is that the whole process of teaching, learning, and assessment is much more systematic, less ad hoc and arbitrary and vice-versa, and it is intended to demonstrate the learning that the students have accomplished over a period of instruction. Right? So it is about facilitating learning. Right? The students don't know that, nor do they care about that. We care about it. Right? And we have to help them care about it. You know when they realize the importance of what they did? 3 years after they have left university and they're in a work situation, they say, oh, I remember doing this in year 2. Yeah. And it's only then they see the importance of what they were doing. When the pieces start falling into place. Right? And some people, unfortunately, never have that opportunity to actually put the things in place. Okay? All right, Richard, we could continue now, right? Oh, okay. So what I want you to do now, is see what, we'll go back to that slide in a little while. So I will look at, let's look at what I did for my template, on my template. Oh, we'll take off the light now so people can see. So I am saying for my assessment task, I'm going to ask a question in the in-course assessment, right? What characteristics of the table of specs enable it to improve assessment validity? So this is what I am lining up with, explain the role of the table assess in test construction. So I am looking at a particular question to see whether the students have grasped that. What characteristics of the table of specs enable it to improve assessment validity? And these are the things that I would want in my response. So when the students are responding, I'm looking to see if they talk about the two-dimensional structure, the match of the LOs to the assessment task, if it takes account of the topics and the levels, right? If it presents a visual of the match, right? So in constructing their response to the question on the characteristics of the task, I want them to look at all of the characteristics and make some statements. So these are the essential or key concepts in the response. Notice I'm not writing out the response, right? I am just saying what are the key characteristics in the response. So what I am starting here, we will do on the next occasion, is my mark scheme. Your mark scheme don't come out after you give the exam, right? You start working on your mark scheme every time you start thinking about what your question is. All right, let me see for the second objectives. You notice that I am dealing with the two objectives, these two objectives, you know, as one. I'm giving them one task, right? And I will have this in the final examination, final assessment. Give me an example of a test paper, including, not including, so it may include or it may not include the mark scheme and the learning outcomes on which the test, it must have the learning outcomes on which the test paper is constructed, provide a critical analysis. So in my exam, that's what I'm saying I'm giving for the final exam. Oops. For the final exam, I'm giving them an example of a test because I want them to critically assess a test in relation to the stated learning outcomes, right? So I have to give them a test that they may not have seen before, and the learning outcomes are not on which the test is constructed, and provide a critical analysis. And these are the things I would want in the response. Spread of content, right? How much content is covering. The assessment of the content associated with the learning outcomes. So now I gave them the learning outcomes. I didn't give them this teaching method, so they could only compare it with the learning outcomes. Levels of the learning outcomes that are addressed, you know, in the test paper. Levels of the questions addressed. Value judgment based on reasoning and other relevant opinions. So the point I'm making is that you're starting with your learning with your mark schemes as soon as you have defined your task. Right, I notice silence, and I am ready for questions. All right, so are we seeing where we're supposed to derive our assessments from? All right? It's not magic. All right? It's a deliberate attempt at linking the major components of your course. I could have asked a question. I could have given them the teaching methods and asked them questions, you know, and see my responses would be slightly different. I could give them both the teaching methods and the learning outcomes. So it means that they'll probably have to have a more robust response, right? Some people figure when you do all of this that you're giving them the answers. And no. You are clarifying the concepts in your mind to be sure that your questions are indeed asking what you say you are asking. Because we don't know that. Half of the time, when we see our students answering questions askance or, way over there, it's because that's what it's conveying, that's the message it's conveying, because we think we are so clear, right, in what we are saying and how we are saying it. And to the students, it's not ringing true, right? So to avoid that kind of confusion, or at least to limit it, because I don't think you can absolutely avoid, but you limit it, you have to make the link here. And sometimes after you do your questions, you still have to have your colleague read it to see if the questions themselves will lead to the response that you have indicated. How you frame the question. You just change a preposition, yeah, of to for, and you mean a whole different thing, right? So it's important, very imperative that we really, mull over these things from before. So when you take your course, when you get your course, and it is really problematic to know that you're going to be teaching a course on August the 29th, and classes are starting on the 1st of September, because you don't have time to really prepare. All right, so you really need to know you're teaching a course from the semester before. So you could spend some time going through, developing your teaching methods, seeing what you're going to do. You have materials to develop. You have searches to conduct. You have a lot of stuff to do to prepare. And remember, effective teaching is 99% preparation. So you have a lot of preparation to do, including developing the assessment tasks and the response framework. Questions? No questions? Oh, we're getting questions.
So would one of the tasks be looking at test paper?
What do you mean looking at your test paper?
Like you said, you're going to give them an example of a test paper. And
Oh, you mean in the teaching? Yeah. Yes, definitely. The only way you could actually do that at the end of the day is if they have had practice. You mightn't give them a whole paper, but certainly parts of a paper, the questions and so on. They have to develop skills to develop that critical eye. All of the higher order skills, let me say now, the higher order skills in particular need time to develop. Well, learning is a process. It's a process, so it takes time. Even when you're doing drill and practice, you have to say it over and over and over and over and over. Okay? Yes, William? That's why you have to think about it. you know? So how can I phrase it or frame it? How can I use a different method to get it? So your teaching methods. And that's why I'm saying you can't get this thing like the 29th of August when you're starting on the 1st, because you have to think, how am I going to challenge these students? How am I going to get them? What are the errors they made before, especially if you're teaching, if you've taught the course before, right? What are the errors they're prone to? How much of yourself you must now extricate from the course and let the students do more interaction, right? So one of the things I really love about teachers is how dynamic it is. It changes on you. So if somebody said me that they're using the same method they used 5 years ago, they're using it, I'm saying, well, something is wrong with you. You might think you're teaching, but that is not teaching. You have to be on your toes, so you need time to prepare. What are the new methods that you might use? And reading is also a very important part of the process, because what other people have tried, might influence what you do. And even sometimes you try something and you realize, oh, I could have done X instead.
can you, like I'm trying some things in the course to say I'm not going to actually, well, I didn't prepare for it, but I'm using like a test and to develop for the next.
So you're using these students as guinea pigs. But you can't do that. Because they're human people. Well, actually, you're supposed to have your things well planned out, and you look and see. There's no problem, no harm in looking to see what is working and what is not working. But you can't be just experimenting. Okay, all right. You have a systematic. Some people get up in the morning and have a bright idea. I say, oh, I think I shall try this. You have to think through before you go trying. And you cannot try 1,000,001 things on your students either. Right? So that is why a lot of thinking has to go into it. And it is also important to find out what other people have done, if anybody else has done something similar, to know what are the challenges and so on. So you don't really, you don't see them as guinea pigs at all. But you need to make slight adjustments. Yeah, okay. So we'll accept the inverted commas. Darren, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, you mentioned using different methods and that sort of stuff, not doing the same thing you did 5 years ago this year. But when you're faced with, you're using the 12th edition of the same textbook, and there are other textbooks that have really great software platforms that the students can use.
Mm-hmm.
Head
of department, tell if you want to change the book for this reason or that reason. Then, but generally, anything you do, just make sure you have your reason for doing it. No, you don't have to rock the boat. Well, again, a lot will depend on the head of your department. But really and truly, it's your right as the. In fact, I would imagine. And I would imagine that you have at the end of, I'm only imagining, at the end of the semester, you would have a meeting because you would have, the students' marks and you have decisions to make and so on. So I would think you should have a semester review meeting. When I was in charge of an institution, that's what we had. You had to go through that. So as I say, I imagine if you have an effective head, you should have that. And if your head doesn't have that at the moment, you should encourage your head to have such a meeting. Or you simply send an email and say you'd like to change the book to be changed for such and such and such a reason. Right? And usually your course is every other semester, so you have a little window of opportunity to say.
But invariably, they didn't want to buy the recommended text. So the supplemental reading that is available there.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah, and so they don't buy the one recommended text. So if you recommend 101, you will find that they're not going to do it. One, and they don't buy it. They try to download it and yeah. Well, so you know what's important for them? They don't want to spend their money on books. Yes, Monica? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Pre and post test? No, that's a legitimate. Oh, excellent. So you see, there are many things that you can learn. As you grow and you know more, there is more that you can do and things differently for your students that will help them. And you see, one of the things now, we tend to put up because we know our students, we know that they don't like to read and they don't like to buy the books, and we figure that they don't like everything. But there may be things that they like. All right, so don't figure you wouldn't try something, try, without, by putting up a barrier and saying that students wouldn't go for it. You could never tell what they would go for. And in fact, the students this year might go for something that And then next year, that same thing will not work with your students. That's the challenge of teaching, right? It's, the rules are not very hard and fast, right? Because your students are changing all the time, right? They come in, and one of the things they are doing is they're coming in with new skills. Do you know any of the new skills they have? Right. All right, texting. Do you use texting? No. Yeah. Well, you see? So you're losing an opportunity to use their strengths. So let them solve a problem and text to their colleagues and get here and come up with one text that they will send to you. You use their strengths, right? So you make learning fun. It's interesting. They want to. They found something on the net. They like to go on the net. Right? Of course, they want to go and look at things that you don't want to think. But send them to look for things that you want. So yes, they're on the net. They're in a place that they're familiar and so on. All right. So you use their strengths. All right. One of the reasons probably why they don't like books is because books are, yeah, they're not obsolete yet, but they're fast getting there. Give them a CD, a DVD, and, well, download something, ebooks, right, and see if that would not help. Right, okay. I'm glad to hear that. Yes, Aaron. You don't have internet access? Yeah, we'll complain about it until they get it to work. Complain. Yes. Right. Yes, and it's important for you to let your head and the thing and the principal know these things, because as we move to, we're encouraged to use technology more and more. And if you find that when you cannot use the technology because of the infrastructure, because as far as some people are concerned, everything is hunky-dory. Yeah. So you have to let people know that it is not.
It works down by rituals. But it doesn't work in the classroom.
So that is something that we have to get a, I don't know. I think they have the emphasis on the wrong things. They're very, very protective of your morals, so they don't want you to get on any porn site and things. So the whole thing is set up so that you can't download things. So I think that is one of the problems we have. All right. Any questions? Does it look daunting or does it look easy?
Just go through again the assessment methods of the questions.
The assessment methods, you mean, here I'm asking a question, and here I have a final exam.
Okay, so the questions come throughout
Well, that is just one question. I could do this question anytime. I just put here in course. Now, for instance, the same question could come in a final exam, but I want them to be able to do this even within the course. So it's up to you when you would like them to do it, because this here doesn't say when they have to be able to do that. So you can do it in course, at the end of the course. So you can have an in-course assessment, and you can have, for instance, you might come in your weekly quiz or bi-weekly quiz, as the case may be. But you decide, right? It's very difficult to decide when we just have two learning outcomes. If you have your suite of learning outcomes, then you can say, all right, well, this will be an in-course quiz, or this will be an exercise or an assignment. So there are a number of things that you can do. So you can have this as an assignment. I put it as an in-course question, right? I didn't say if it's going to be written or if they're going to discuss it. And so you could have different ways of doing it. So you should indicate how you're going to have them answer the question.
So, for instance, I had a course where can I use multiple choice questions, and my learning outcomes were to be able to distinguish between like scalar and vector quantities, and they were supposed to be able to perform vector addition, so like addition and multiplication. So it had short questions where they add vectors or multiply vectors as well.
You did that in a multiple choice or in a short answer question? No. You can do it, but you have to learn, but you have to know how to write good multiple choice questions to get that. To get the thing. Now you can't do it, but. Yeah, but you see, when they're doing that, they are able to distinguish. They're doing a different exercise from being able to construct. What is the thing you said?
Being able to perform.
To perform. If you're asking them to perform, they will actually have to probably come up with an algorithm and perform it to solve something. No, it might be perform is what you want. But your assessment method would, I would think that you might have a short answer questions, yes, or structured questions or something like that, right? So multiple choice are really good for recalling information. They're not that good for distinguishing. You can do it, but you have to structure it very, very, very carefully. You have to know how to write really good multiple choice questions. So I would say that probably short answer, or you might have a worksheet. You see a worksheet with those problems, with a series of problems, will allow you to know if you can perform, the students could perform the task. But when you have things like perform, which I think are really very good, you have to provide opportunity for them to demonstrate that they can perform. They have to be able to do it, right? And in some cases, you could actually say the degree to which they can do it. Yes, they can perform.
In the assessment process, which should be continuation assessment, at least in the course that I teach, one of the things that I would ask, like once a week or every 2 weeks, have you been observing your groups within the context of
What learning outcome that is targeting?
theories?
Yeah, but when you say, well, what are they supposed to be doing with these theories?
Okay, say for instance, understanding or recognizing stages of groups, where you are in group development.
Okay.
So then,
As a sociology course, what is it? Social, okay.
So, in meaning, as the group progresses,
Mm-hmm.
there should be indicators, or there are indicators that would say to you where the group may be.
Yeah, but so how would you determine that from your students? You say, what assessment
I would
process?
ask, where do you think your group is in terms of developmental process?
So you're going to ask that
Just asking to get a sense that they understand what the theories, how the theories can be applied to the assessing of where the groups.
All right, but don't you think that kind of reflection and application is better done through journaling, especially if they do it as a group?
Well, actually, that is also part of it, because part of the exercise, the exercise for the term is part of the course. Good thing, you have to find a group. If they're in placements, they may probably have groups, right? Not all of them have groups, but I assign.
But if they don't all have groups, how could they have the group experience?
No, would be just, okay. One of the things I would suggest to them, if they do not if you go to church, if you're in a choir, observe what is happening in your group.
And they have guidelines for observation?
Yes, there are guidelines for observation. But
But why do they not have groups in the class? The reason why I'm asking is because
it happens in labs that I don't teach.
so doesn't the lab have a structure that they have to work in pairs or?
Yes, the lab, but I don't teach that lab. I do not teach that. I do the lecture.
So that means you have to talk to the lecturer of the thing to make sure that they all have.
But what they also assign to in groups is that they have to find groups in the community that would have different kinds of dynamics that would in fact reflect where the stage.
But how can they find those groups?
Oh, I assign them.
Oh, okay, they assign. Okay, all right.
Go to what is it? Substance abuse groups. There is one for women who have been coping with depression. So you have those sorts of clinical groups around.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, I just wanted to find out if they think.
You're saying your response to me seems that I'm probably on the right group.
Oh, okay.
There are groups like Cancer Society, Women and Breast Cancer, but they have ongoing groups. So the stages of the groups would be difficult to determine because you have new individuals.
The groups themselves are dynamic, so they. So how would you ensure that the students understand the formation of these groups and the stages that the groups evolve through?
Okay, through discussion and assigned reading. And that's it.
Okay.
Because the ongoing groups, those are lifelong groups. So it would be difficult to really.
Yeah, well, that's what I think, and that is why I think the groups that they are part of, that you are forming, if they are part of that group, then they can see the group from the inception through the evolution of the group. But it's your course. You have the final say. You make the decisions. All right. Any other question on that process? If you don't have any questions, I would give you a brief break. Accent being on brief, right? And then we will start with section 3 because this is just the start of your question paper. So you might have questions, tasks, questions, and then we have to see how we make your question paper and your questions valid. So when we come back and do the table of specs. All right? So we don't have much to offer you, but we try. Okay? So at least you can have some coffee. I'm hoping you're getting, and tell me if I'm wrong, you know. What I'm hoping that you're getting is how the various course components evolve from your learning outcomes. But I want to tell you that it is not a one-way street. Because when you reach at the end here and you realize, hey, I really want my students to be able to do X, Y, and Z, you might have to, just as how you told me a little while ago, if you needed to change the learning outcome. So you might have to change your learning if that is not, if what you want at the end is not matching. So this is what we talk about, linking the learning outcomes to your assessment and teaching. All right? I'm hoping that you're seeing too that where we say that to critically assess a test in relation to, in here, you would have to give them, you see where you have that group activity, you have to give them elements of that. Because they will only be able to assess tests if they have practice. You can't just say you will spring this on them at the end of the day. Right? Because sometimes we feel, we know how to get the students. And we say we will see if they're thinking. Right? But your learning outcomes is not addressing thinking. your learning outcomes is addressing something that you specify. So when you come and you ask something, you spring something on them and say, well, we'll see who are the thinking students in the class. You are really assessing at cross purposes, right? Aston says that we are not really assessing what we say we ought to be assessing, and we are assessing at a tangent to what we're doing. So it looks good, but is it valid? You always have to ask yourself about your assessments, whether they are valid and reliable. These are the first two qualities of effective assessment: validity and reliability, and fairness. It must also be fair to the students. So don't pull things from up your sleeves. It is not magic, right? Let the students, expose them to what you want them to. Yes, Darren?
In instances where you're not presenting the exam, you see the exam and the students see the exam, how effective is that?
Very bad. Very bad for everybody. Because you see, I think we tend to have the emphasis in the wrong places, all right? Because, as I said, you're supposed to do this before you start teaching. And it is supposed to be a collective decision. So the people who are involved in the course need to get together to see how the course should unfold. It should not be a secret at the end of the day. And it shows a lack of respect and distrust by certain people, the heads or coordinators, whoever is saying. So they're not treating you like a colleague. So sometimes you have to say, I'm not being treated like a colleague. I am a professional. Why would you want to hide the test paper from me as a colleague? Right? And sometimes there's all this internecine, let me see, wars going on, and to what end? And if we are saying that we are moving towards learner-centered teaching, right? The learners are at the center of the teaching learning process. It's the people, these are the people who we have to be concerned about. And hiding things from colleagues is really not part of that whole paradigm. You're supposed to be collaborative, because you might have ideas that whoever constructed the course may not have had in terms of a teaching method, in terms of an assessment. And the more you learn about assessments and teaching methods, the more you are able to explore in a systematic and scientific way means of facilitating the learning process. And that is what we really are about, facilitating learning. All right, so this looks easy, right? It is easy enough once you have learning outcomes, right? My concern is that some courses have too many learning outcomes, right? So what you may need to do is to collapse some of these learning outcomes and work it with modules or units, okay? And in that way, you will probably have better management of the course, and your students will be able to have better management of the course. The other thing I want to say about that is that when you are dealing with modules and so on, you tend to be conceptualizing your course better. So a course is not a flat thing. You just start off with topic 1 and then topic 2 and topic. No. The course is supposed to be made up of concepts that are interrelated in some way. They're not supposed to be disparate entities, right? So it is about working with that. And I say, if I'm seeing a course for every week you're having a new topic starting, I know something is wrong with that course, without even going further. So look at your course, modularize, see what the major concepts are, how the concepts are related, and surprise, surprise, your students can do that. once you have identified the major concepts, you can have your students do concept maps, especially for revision and review. And you can actually, I'm talking teaching now, you can actually have your students with the skeleton of the concept map. And when they come to class, they fill in the parts as they go along. So the students have a reason to come to class, right? And they are involved and engaged, and because they're trying to find out, what exactly are you talking? How is this going to contribute to my map? And then they have ownership of their maps and so. So there are lots of things that could be explored. All right, let's see what we have. Oh, so what I want you, before we go on to the next section, this is what, with examine your question that you write. So I didn't give you a chance to write the question. So what I'm going to ask you to do, see if you can write a question from your learning outcomes. See if you can, at least one question. And then I want to see if you can examine your question to determine the match, whether it matches. Some people showed me theirs already, and at least they talked about it. And indicate the level of taxonomy, because that's important, the taxonomic level. How many people are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy? Almost everybody. Anybody familiar with Grasher's taxonomy? Grasher is like Bloom, but he was born in no, he wrote his book in 72 as opposed to Bloom in 56. So he's a modern Bloom, but he died. Huh? Well, 72, yeah, for taxonomies. Grasha. Yes, his book is Teaching with Style. Huh? What happened? Henry doesn't have a method. No. Sorry. Sorry to disappoint you. The 21st century version. All right, so you're working out very quickly a question or a task. All right, let me see if I have something on Bloom's taxonomy here, or Grasher's taxonomy. As soon as you finish writing your question, you will see you have a sheet that says writing your examination questions from your learning outcomes. Well, you have a set of papers, a handout. And if you look at page 6, well, it starts on page 5, but page 6 explains it. You see Anthony Grasher's taxonomy from Learning with Style, and you see a copy of his book there. He was from Cincinnati. He died a couple of years ago. And what you will notice about his taxonomy is it's in segment 2, yes. That's it. Yeah. Right. It's the last reading in segment 2. And you would notice that he has, Bloom's has 6 levels. Oh, where is? Let me see if I could put it in. All right, so could you just look at your question, examine your question now, and see if it links with your, so it's like what? Nkisi, that's how you pronounce it? Kisi? Nikisi. Like what Nikisi did before, and she was thinking that she might have had to change her learning outcomes when we said that the learning outcomes were good, but perhaps she needed to change the assessment. All right? So when you look at your assessment task, what you want the students to do, how you want them to respond, when you look at that and you compare it with your learning outcomes, you see you might need to make an adjustment to either one. That's why it's an iterative process. So you got that, Harold, right? All right, I want to move into segment 3. All right, so we see we see how you can come up with tasks and assignments or assessments and so on your major sheet. So you can have your major sheet with the various course components elucidated based on your learning outcomes. But almost all our courses, at least our undergraduate courses, would have final exams. All right? And final examinations tend to be rather problematic from the point of view that they may not at all be valid, far less very reliable. All right? Yes? It depends on the course, but yes, you could have any course like that. All right? As a matter of fact, we have too many examinations to what end we know not. Right? Somehow we feel that all the inconsistencies and variability within the course will be satisfied by a final exam that is worth 60%. I want to say that there is no magic in 60%, nor in a final exam. Because if your final exam is not valid and reliable, you still will be making spurious inferences about your students' competence and abilities and knowledge. All right? Yes? Come to the workshop. Yes, yes. Validity and reliability in this context. Validity? Well, in any context really, is doing at the end of the day what you intend to do. So whatever you set out in your intentions, and our curriculum intentions are explicated in our learning outcomes. So what you have defined there, right, should measure up with what you're assessing at the end of the day. And if you don't have a match between those two, between what is intended to be measured and what is actually measured, then it is invalid. And that's the first step in having quality assessment. The other part is reliability. And reliability is the accuracy with which we assess what we are assessing. In other words, the more error you have in your assessment processes, and this could occur in a number of cases, from marking to the paper itself, to the administration, but the amount of error, the more error you have, the less reliable your assessment, right? And I always marvel at the fact that we have a 70% pass rate. So that means we accept 30% error. All right? So 30% thing. That is really madness. It's a madness of some kind. But it's understandable because your exam's not valid anyway. So you need to have all that error to make it reasonable. or else your students wouldn't pass. But it really, so if you get your assessments to be valid and reliable, then you can get it to be reliable and you can have your assessment cutoffs higher. And I note, I should inform you, that the pass mark is going to be increased from 2014 to 50%. That's not good enough. It's not good enough, but it's better than 40%. Right? But it means that you have some time to make the alignments. That is what that means. It don't mean you have more time to maneuver. You have more time to get it right. All right? So that is a very critical part of what we're going to be doing. Okay. Yes. Yes? Chris?
No problems with the 100% coursework.
What happened to 100% coursework?
No problems with
100% coursework?
Yeah, and no final exams. No issues, right?
Why should there be an issue? What do you think is the issue?
I don't want my HOD coming to tell me afterwards, here what, you need to have a final exam, and then you are saying something else, and then he's saying something else.
Well, here's what I'm saying, that your assessment must be congruent with your learning outcomes. Not all learning outcomes can be assessed in a final exam, and sometimes what you do, depending on what the nature of the course, a final exam may not be appropriate because it is not doing anything with your learning outcomes. It is perfunctory. And that's another word I don't like at all. Perfunctory. You're just performing actions without reason. So if your head comes and says, you must have a final, he must have a reason. And if you are saying your course would have only coursework, you must have a reason. So it's not an arbitrary, well, I don't feel that you should have any final exam, or I don't feel you should have coursework. No, it is based on the learning outcomes of this course, right? It would be better assessed by method A, B, C, or D. Or you might want A, B, C, and D. Yes, yes, Wilfred.
In my experience, that any attempt to change the ratio of course finance mark, you've got to justify it to an academic board. So there's a process. And you can't just change it just like that.
No, and nobody is saying that you change it just like that.
You've got to justify
You always have to justify everything you do. That's why I'm saying it's a systematic, well thought through process. So, and it has to pass your IDU too. 25 to, okay. We are ACWAC. It will have to go through ACWAC. ACWAC and academic, but yes, and you change your way. We don't have. Once you all do the once you all have your rationale and thing, and you have a dean who will push it through academic board, it goes. No, you can't do that. There's no magic in those numbers. I would like people to not have those numbers at the end of the course, because they forget when you say assessment, that's what it's meant. No, assessment doesn't mean that. Assessment means what are the kinds of tasks that you are going to be having in this course, whether it's projects, in-course assessment, and so on. So when you get down to those, you might say the percentage. But really and truly, it is the nature of the assessment that is more critical than the weightings. At the next session, we will do this thing about weightings. This magic 40, 60, right? How you come up with weightings in a course depends on your learning outcomes. It is not because somebody said, well, I will accept 60%. No. Who is that person to accept 60%? Yes, Vila?
Yeah, you said earlier that you would, it's left up to you just remove all the final exams, right?
Did I make a broader statement? I said we have too many. Right now, a lot of the majority, the vast majority of, I don't want to say all, but the vast majority of them are neither valid nor reliable. So I would say that you need to review all of them. There is another problem, in addition to the fact that you have the problem of the inherent validity and reliability, you also have the problem of administration. Test administration is a big thing. It affects reliability. So if you don't have places where the students can take the exams and the same exam at the same time and they can't see in each other's paper, those things compromise the reliability of what you're doing anyway. Right? And I know that Jesse and George has been asking for people to consider other formats of assessment because they can't handle the number, right? Especially as we have grown tremendously over the last few years. So I know what is happening. I don't think anybody dares to look at the reliability. Well, I don't think people look at them anyway, validity and reliability of the assessment. What I would say, however, I would make the more sweeping statement. Why do master's courses have final exams? Why? That one I would say they're supposed to remove them all. Course assignments, yeah. And actually people fail that more readily. You know why? Because it takes some discipline and focus and so to actually do the assignments and finish and so on. Well, you have to make sure you give assignments that they can't copy from other people. Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Yeah, that is a whole big business, but we're not getting there. Yeah, but I think that how the assignments are given, when they are given, what aspects, because one of the things that we want to always ask them to do these essays and these research projects, you will combine what you're given with the presentations and so on. So you don't set the students up with ways by which they can cheat the system, because guess what? They will cheat the system. So I keep saying, you know your audience. And once you know your audience, you are supposed to take corrective measures. Yes, William?
What are the objective tools that could be used to measure reliability?
What are the objective tools? Yeah, well, you could use R, Cronbach's R, and there are mathematical things for doing that. Reliability in particular. The validity is what we're going to be looking at the tool here now. Right. Right, but validity, R, you could look at any measurement and assessment book, you will see that there are ways to calculate the reliability of things. That's one of the things we did at CXC. And then there are some assessments that are easier to do than, for instance, that's one of the reasons why they use multiple choice in CXC, because you can do reliability tests and calculations very easily, and from then you can extrapolate on the population to see the kind of population, how they change, the whole works. And in fact, if you have reliability that is below 0.888, CXC is not going to accept that exam. Something is wrong with the exam. You know that something is wrong. So that's something that you can calculate very easily, but more easily when you use multiple choice. You use Cronbach's R.
But a little bit further with reliability, how do you deal with students doing very well in coursework? Because there's a level degree of independence and so on. When it comes to the final exam, whether it's right or not, you can't see the connect.
Well, a lot of people make that argument, right? Are you giving them the same thing in the final exam as you're giving them in the.
I'm not talking about the possibility of getting assistance. As somebody said, it's not their alone doing it.
Yeah.
How do you determine whether this?
Well, it depends on the nature of what you're doing, because you see now we tend to be schizophrenic. On the one hand, you want them to use group work, and you want the collective, and you want the sharing, right? So the assessment should go with that. On the other hand, you might want individual work, and you set it up so that you can do individual work. If you look at the research of Felder, and then he has a thing where he teaches first year either biochemistry or physics, and he has his course organized in groups. Now he has both group marks, and he has a whole set of criteria, so by which he has the group. So the group size is no more than 4, and there are ways to deal with dysfunctional groups, which the students can select, and so on. There's a whole research thing on that. And so he has the group marks, and then he has the individual marks, and he said that the computation of the individual marks is a very complex thing which he uses to remove some of the error and bias due to the thing. So you have different ways of doing those things. And what you find in assessments is that more and more people are finding very creative ways to determine what the individual does. Let me give you another example. And this comes from, I think it's Deakin Law School. You know, in law schools, they have what are called monster classes. So if you think your classes are big, you haven't heard of the monster classes. Monster classes are classes with more than 1,200 students. All right? I don't think anybody is approaching that. The only person I know who is approaching something like that is only be here, perhaps here, and you will be using probably multiple choice, a lot of multiple choice, because that's the only way you could get through all of those things. Right? So I know what y'all do. I know what y'all do. Right? And what you're doing is good for the subject, because the first 3 years, the first 3 years of your course is like, of your program, is like the first year of many other programs, of the regular program. So you are trying for them to learn everything about everything and be able to recall it, you know, so that you can build the foundation of diagnosis, because that's where you want to be able to diagnose and solve problems. But to do that, you have to have a certain foundation. We understand that. So in the first 3 years or so, you're going to have this quiet down there, all right, with all the topics. And, but you see, you might have a topic. No, you probably have several learning outcomes of but what is important is to know whether this topic is treated at the most basic level, right? That is, you want them to be able to recall all of the information, or whether they must understand it. For instance, when you start doing some of the physiology and things, they have to understand the processes, and they have to understand some of the relationships and so on. So you might want it at a little higher level. And for some, you might even have application, right? If you have, where you have skills and attitude, you will probably be assessing them at in other formats. You will not probably be assessing them in a multiple choice paper, right? So, yes? Well, no, it's not, well, he had the question, a question that has several parts could in fact reflect a range. That's why you have to know what range is being addressed by each topic, right? So if you're doing physiology, you would have to do knowledge and application. And you might have some skills because you have to do, you all do any measurement kind of things? Not really, the pharmacy people. Yeah, the pharmacy people do. Yeah. and so on. So you would have, depending on the topic, you might have it running right across the board. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So, but these are the decisions you have to make now. And the reason why it's important to do this before you start your course is because you have to know which course you have to address in a drill and practice manner as distinct from a course where you have to be more elevated, where you have to address analysis and synthesis and so on. Okay? Yes, Wilhelmina?
It's difficult and it's related to his question. If, for example, topic 1 and topic 2 is always unknown, right? Says fundamental principles. Then how are you going to change your question from year to year to year if it's just recall, for example? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can change it. Have no fear. You can change it.
I can understand you could change something from know to comprehend or
yeah, but you may not ask every single thing, because one of the things that we know about assessment is that you have to sample. You can't ask every single thing that was done during the course. So you will select out which ones will come this year, and perhaps which, say, some that might come every year because they're so critical, and then there are some. So all of these are judgments you have to make about your course and the topics and so on. Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on what you have in your learning outcomes, because in your learning outcomes, for some people they must be able to recall, explain, and describe. Yes. Yeah, in med sci, the first 3 years, it is, no, but in regular thing, when you come into first principles, if you're doing physics, first principles, they have to recall them, all the laws and things. They have to know those things. So as you were saying, so you might ask them, let's say you're doing chemistry and you ask to define Boyle's law. They must be able to state Boyle's law, right? And then you might ask them to apply it, and you give them a problem to solve. So, but you have to know that. Now, in some cases, depending on the level, for instance, when they go up to level 2, you're not going to ask them to define Boyle's law, but you might say, using principles from Boyle's, then they solve thing. So you know if they know it. If they can't do it, then you say, but these people passed through year 1 and the thing. So, you know, it evolves, right? And you have to be clear in your learning outcomes that you are addressing these, yes. So when you have and that's why in the first part, the thing, we had the topic that were designed. So you'd have your topics, but the verbs will tell you where your assessment should focus, whether it's on knowledge or comprehension or application. Yes. Right. Yes, these are just examples. Now, if you're using Grasher, you would see that Grasher's thing, he has 4 levels. One is basic knowledge and comprehension. So he collapsed these because he says at university level, there is not much distinction between these two. They overlap and so on. Right? Then he had the second one is application. The third one is critical thinking. And then you have problem solving and decision making. And he said he said that his hierarchy was more applicable to university students. Well, his thing came from, then he just capitalized on Bloom's. But Bloom's everybody knows Bloom's. And they have had Anderson, and they did some reorganizing of so they have now put something at the top. I think they switch analysis and not evaluation and synthesis. But basically, knowledge and comprehension, low level. Application in concrete situations, that is higher. And then you have analysis and synthesis and evaluation at a higher order skill. So when we talk about higher order skills, we're talking about that level: analysis, synthesis, evaluation, and so on. And when you talk, which is that, and you'll see some correspondence with Grashers, because critical thinking, problem solving will be in that realm of analysis and synthesis and evaluation. So it's like he collapsed those three into the two, right? Application remains the same, and then he collapsed the knowledge and comprehension. So you can look at that.
Where do we put the language competence?
You have language competence in your learning outcome.
But yeah, well, yes.
Yes. Well, if you have language competence, it will be a topic. It will be a topic.
It will be a topic.
Yeah. At the end of the day, for that, if you are doing that and you're saying that it has to be in your learning outcomes first, that's where it's supposed to be, right? So you can have a general thing at the end of your learning outcomes that writing and presentation, a student will write and present in standard English, whatever. You need that to a certain assigned to that.
Could it be a prerequisite?
A what?
Prerequisite.
It's not. That's not working. That's not working, because they say they must have English and things. Yeah.
I have a problem with lecturers having the responsibility.
Well, let me tell you something. You see, that is why it's important to go to the research. Because yes, they say that students will do writing, and there's a writing center where they can get assistance and so on. But one of the things the research clearly shows is that transfer is not automatic. So while we are very industrious and we say, all right, we'll have the thing, and what you need to do actually is the teaching methods would probably have to be different. And as you rightly say, because they are more mature, they have experience to draw on. Right, and so it's important in the teaching to bring that in. But it's also important for the assessment to think, no, the thing is that they'll be writing the same exam at the end of the day. So they're not, they're in the wrong course. That is what happens. So this is one of the challenges that students need to be directed to, because if you are already working in the environment, then a beginner's course may not be the most appropriate.
If it's mandatory, if you're doing a degree, say this is the introduction course, you have to do it.
Yeah. Right, yes, you have to do it, yeah.
Maybe suggested is that you separate for evening students. There may be like a separate exam for day and evening students.
Well, the thing is, it's very difficult to do that, because then you run into a validity issue and thing, because the objectives are the same. So what could be varied is the teaching methods, but the assessment might also have to accommodate. But they'll have to do that for the other group too, the day group. That is where it's going to be, or else it's a different course. Once you're doing the same course, it has to be the same thing. The only thing that could be different really is the learning. Yes, Monica?
What I would like to know is, like in our situation, we have a group of courses that are examined, which is separate, but basically along similar structures. What I'm looking for is greater autonomy within each course. Is that acceptable?
In terms of teaching?
Like the course that I have responsibility for example, do I have to assess in the way that other people are assessing?
If it's the same course, it should be. No, once it's not the same course, then you feel free to use it. Oh, yes. That's what teaching is. You bring your own thing there. If it's the same course, what you have to do is collaborate to ensure that you are on the same page.
Different course, but the same